if a leader goes out on vacation, like the whole thing falls apart. Like suddenly there's nobody knows how to do anything because that boss is somebody who's constantly jumping in, who's constantly solving the problem, who's constantly clearing out issues, and the team hasn't built that skill yet.
And that right there is the like empowering support, don't solve model. I think the very first thing out of the gate where we misstep, whether it is in the professional world or in our personal world in conversations, is again, we hear information, we immediately relate to it, right? That's how our brain works. But we will prematurely relate. We'll flip the whole script and the energy. We will give advice. We will start to problem solve immediately. And in order to prevent this, it starts with validation. It sounds like this has been a stressful week for you. That validation and meeting that person and letting them know I'm putting forth energy to understand what you're trying to tell me verbally and non-verbally, that keeps the ownership right out of the gate with them. And you're there to support and ask great questions and validate where they're coming from, but sustaining your energy and your boundaries while you're supporting this person.
Welcome back to this episode of Secrets of the Career Game. So many people are trying to navigate a corporate world that is laden with secrets, cleverly hidden, and unspoken rules to a game that most employees don't even know that they're playing. On this podcast, we try to give you a peek behind the curtains and some tips and tricks to ultimately make you successful in your career and help you progress a little bit faster.
Today, I am joined by Leah Marone. She is a former Division I athlete, a psychotherapist, a corporate mental wellness consultant, and she helps high achievers who are struggling with imposter syndrome, perfectionism, and performance anxiety. I'm really, really excited about this chat, Leah. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Kendall.
So you have had a lifetime of high accomplishments, right? Take us a little bit on the journey of your career, coming out of college, moving into the psychotherapist space, and then ending up in corporate wellness. What was that like for you?
Oh my gosh, how much time do we have? No, I'm kidding. I think for me, I've never wanted to avoid subscribing to being pigeonholed, if that makes sense. And so I, of course, have kind of some goals that I set for myself, but I'm really one of those people that I just like to throw things out into the world that I'm passionate about, that I'm knowledgeable about. And the excitement around seeing where that takes me has been thrilling. It's been anxiety provoking at times too. But I think that, I have a fierce inner critic. I have this very fierce internal driver that I've learned to appreciate and also soothe when needed. But I think it's just really when I complete a chapter, if you will, or kind of get the experience of something with, a role or people that's like exhilarating, the critical part of me is like, all right, what's next? And so I feel like I've kind of through life been essentially flying by the seat of my pants, but also learned how to incorporate being mindful about this at the same time, because we know that when we operate with like kind of an all or nothing strategy, we crash and burn. So that's kind of the abstract way of answering your question.
No, I love it though. And obviously you work with so many high achieving professionals, and there's clearly an alignment between your personal self and how you view your achievement and these individuals that you're working with. And so many of them feel, drained, they feel disconnected from their purpose. What do you think are some of those big factors? Like you've obviously found a good balance between knowing yourself and your limitations and what opportunities you have, but also optimizing for it. What really holds people back from finding that same kind of balance in their own careers, even when they're like doing everything right on paper? What do you feel like is really keeping them from finding that balance?
That's such a great question. I think, in my experience and working with people clinically and just even on the macro level with companies and teams, I think, people that have kind of this fierce internal drive and that are go-getters oftentimes subscribe to this all or nothing mentality. It's kind of that work hard, play hard. And it's hard for them, I think, sometimes to step into the gray. It's like either black or white. And I also think that, it's this pressure, not only externally, but more importantly, internally, of just always being on. And so when we might be getting signals from our mind or our body, like, whoa, you need to recover. You need to set a boundary here. Things are happening and how long are you going to keep this up? Oftentimes we will plow right through that because this part of us inside is like, well, if you let up, if you lose your momentum, we're not going to be able to get it back. And so we see oftentimes that it's this very, steady climb upward, upward, upward. And then it kind of results in this crash and burn. And you'll see that a lot of times with very high achievers, with, people with perfectionistic tendencies, fear-centered critics, kind of subscribing, unfortunately, to this burnout cycle, kind of this overexhaustion, overextension. And as much as they might be keeping up their physical routines, like they might be going to the gym every day, they might be doing X, Y, and Z and checking the box, their mental and emotional game, and kind of they're out of shape with that. They're in shape maybe physically, but emotionally, mentally, there's a huge disconnect, which that is not a good recipe then.
Leah, you didn't have to make this whole episode about me, but I appreciate it. I love that for us. No, I always joke that I have a very high stress threshold, right? I can handle a lot of what you're describing, that upward steady climb for an extended period of time before I crash out, compared to many people who I know who don't have such a high threshold. But there's so much of what you're speaking to that, frankly, I feel in my day-to-day life. So I'm sure other listeners as well are like, this is me. I am that type A perfectionist, steady climb, and then massive crash out type personality. And I even see that, right? There have been times in my own career where I worked so hard. I've talked about this on the pod before. I worked really hard years ago to get to the CFO level. That was my goal. That's where I was going to feel successful, which doesn't actually happen. And I got the job offer and I was like, oh no, thank you.
Wow.
This suddenly sounds awful.
Wow.
And I don't know why. And so I love what you're calling attention to, which is we might physically be doing the right things. We might even, from a to-do list checkpoint perspective, be making that climb towards the top. But if we're not taking care of the mental side, it's all going to fall apart at some point.
Absolutely.
So you talk, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you talk a lot about your support and don't solve framework. Tell us a little bit about it and how leaders can kind of apply this so that they themselves are not burning out and they're building teams that are less susceptible to that burnout as well.
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting thing because you think about people, especially with high emotional intelligence, that can read a room very quickly, that again have high expectations and high internal pressures. We tend to, in interactions and relationships, almost like preemptively prescribe what our role is. And what I mean by that is like when someone shares something that might have some emotional interwoven with it, you can identify they're going through something that's challenging them or, uncomfortable. We tend to jump in quickly to fix and solve. And it comes from a good place, kind of like it's generally where we want to soothe this person. We want to be helpful, but we come in fixer mode rather than keeping the ownership with that person and allowing them to get their reps in. And what I mean by reps, it's like if you go to the gym, you know what I mean by reps, but thinking about too, like that is an emotional and mental rep that we need to go through to establish and gain momentum with those processing skills involved in solving problems and getting through uncomfortable times full of turmoil. And if we are like serial fixing as leaders, as parents, as partners, as friends, and coming in and not kind of withholding the urgency to fix and solve and grab ownership of that, we're not empowering. We're creating almost these little micro codependencies, if you will. And you see this time and time, not only in families, but in the workplace, where leaders have this kind of narrative that they subscribe to, where it's like, if my team member or my team is in distress, if they're falling behind in this way, they internalize it and say things like, well, then I'm not a good leader. And so you can see that sometimes jumping in too quick, not executing the patience with keeping ownership with people and supporting rather than solving. It's a way too to soothe our discomfort. It's a way to confirm to our ego, we're a good leader, we're a good parent, we're a good friend. And you can see where it's kind of robbing people of that themselves. And it's a recipe for extreme overextension and exhaustion. Think about that. In every relationship you're in, if you're jumping in as a fixer and a solver, that doesn't leave very much room for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can think of so many examples that I've encountered in the corporate world where if a leader goes out on vacation, like the whole thing falls apart. Like suddenly there's nobody knows how to do anything because that boss is somebody who's constantly jumping in, who's constantly solving the problem, who's constantly clearing out issues, and the team hasn't built that skill yet. So I definitely think what you're saying is relevant and it's prevalent in what we're seeing in the workplace. So you talked a little bit about like patience, like holding back. So what are some of those other soothing mechanisms that leaders can implement if they're like, oh, but my knee-jerk reaction is like, I do want to jump in. What do you encourage them to do instead.
Yes. And this too, again, I am not being unrealistic with the whole notion that we can't have these patient, relaxed, focused conversations in any given day in corporate America. Like things are quick, things are urgent. Like that's not what I'm implying here, not having like these mini therapy sessions at work. But I think it's like if you're a leader and you subscribe to the open door policy, my first thought is how's that working for you? Number one, because it's such an invasive interruption, and we have this narrative too, again, like, well, I need to always be there for my team. But you can see where this creates sometimes that dependency, and it kind of fuels us and lets us know, like, do you see I'm purposeful. I'm there. I'm doing what I need to do. I'm a good leader. And so a lot of times you'll find that when someone, let's just say you're leading someone and they're constantly coming into your office or emailing you for your feedback, you to structure them, you to validate or affirm, it just, there's like an insecurity within them that they just are constantly needing you. That's like such an opportunity, I think, as a leader to call out what you've noticed, to set aside a specific time or two during the week where you meet and let this person deal sometimes with that discomfort and gain those problem-solving skills and resourcefulness needed, rather than immediately thinking like, oh my gosh, I got to go run to Kendall. She's got to okay this. She's got to know what to do. And that right there is the like empowering support, don't solve model. I think the very first thing out of the gate where we misstep, whether it is in the professional world or in our personal world and conversations, is again, we hear information, we immediately relate to it, right? That's how our brain works. But we will prematurely relate. We'll flip the whole script and the energy. We will give advice. We will start to problem solve immediately. And in order to prevent this, it starts with validation. And validation could be a head nod, just as you're doing. It could be eye contact. It could be a paraphrasing statement such as, no, it sounds like this has been a stressful week for you. That validation and meeting that person and letting them know I'm putting forth energy to understand what you're trying to tell me verbally and non-verbally, that keeps the ownership right out of the gate with them. And you're there to support and ask great questions and validate where they're coming from, but sustaining your energy and your boundaries while you're supporting this person. Because it makes sense, especially with leaders and relationships, how that's still leading with empathy, but you're not being weighted down after every interaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We could spend the rest of the episode talking about just the answer to that one question, because I feel like there's so many good nuggets that people can take away if they're in leadership positions, right? And, this is something I personally had to learn the hard way. I'm very high achieving, but I tend to be very hands off as a leader. I'm very like, you will figure it out. And I support you. And when you mess up, I'll be there to make sure you don't get fired, but like you're given space for that. But it causes its own contrary issues, which is because they're so autonomous, they don't always get the support that they do need. And I have an employee who is that person who pings every 15 minutes. In fact, I've had 6 messages while we've been recording today, like just ding, 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 ding. And most of the time, I will not respond for 2 or 3 hours, not because I don't want to be there supporting them, but because I know that this particular individual needs space to realize they're correct, to make the decision and move forward before I chime in. And then usually when I chime in, I'm like, hey, did you already move forward with this? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, great, it was the right thing to do. Here's that space. But he said working for me was a rough adjustment, because he's like, I'm used to managers wanting to answer every question and you just don't. And I was like, well, your point's not helpful. Early on in my career as a leader, I'd have been there 3 seconds in every team's message. And now I'm like, it doesn't help you grow. It doesn't help you evolve. And there's a time and a place for that. If you're fresh out of college, you probably do need a lot more support. But as you get more senior, building that resiliency, that self-problem skills, I can see that being really, really important. Not to say I don't always jump in and sometimes give advice prematurely. I joke my husband is married to a career coach. I'm like, he'll complain about his work and I'm like, is this a like Kendall the wife, oh that's so hard kind of conversation, or a Kendall the career coach, this is what you should do situation? It's almost never Kendall the career coach. So no, I love this. This is so true. And as people are building these skills, as people are building these leadership skills, and they start to move up, they start to transition into more seniority, into a different industry, into a different leadership level, how do they stay confident? Because one of the things you mentioned about insecurity, they're pinging you because they have this insecurity or they need this validation. how do leaders stay confident as they continue to grow and evolve into, frankly, uncertainty?
Yeah, I think that too. I mean, that's such a good point. And that, we're no strangers to that. And even when we feel like we've kind of reached, we're like, I've arrived. And then something else kind of comes to challenge us. That's just kind of the
Mm-hmm.
nature, I think, of life, and also the nature of a go-getter, right? You have
Mm-hmm.
yourself kind of open to those challenges, which is amazing and such a great quality. I do think it is really thinking about playing fair with yourself. We are so quick to pull out like, I should have did that, or this person probably thinks this, or I probably have this label on me now. Like, we're so quick to make assumptions, fill in the gaps, kind of compute, if you will, or process information through that negative filter. And, I think it's so important to build muscle around playing fair. So as many times as we're kind of looking through that negative lens, it's also, we need to validate and affirm ourselves. And it might feel inauthentic. It might feel a little pushed or kind of forced, but it is kind of acknowledging like, I spent some energy on that. I spent some time on that. I'm transitioning. I am moving into a chapter or a role that is ambiguous, that is challenging me in this way. But it's, again, sometimes even asking yourself, what am I not trusting? What am I not trusting about myself? And that question for me has like level set everything and given me kind of this reset. Because oftentimes it's that critical part of me trusting that I'm not going to be able to protect myself from feeling things that historically and globally humans don't like to feel, which is, insecure, which is isolated, which is incompetent, which is, just uncomfortable. And so it's confirming for myself, like, hey, you know what? I've had a lot of reps in a lot of different areas in my life, maybe not this one in particular, but historically we've been able to recover. Historically, we've been able to be resourceful. And that's good data. That's good data. And that's good, like, things to pull out of your resilience bank. And so I really do think it's acknowledging the reality of moving and transitioning and how there's a lot of unknowns. But also pulling from past experiences and data when, you've gotten through them. You're there. You've already arrived. Like, it's something to refer to.
How do you feel that this intersects with imposter syndrome? Because I coach to something similar when it comes to imposter syndrome. Hey, I'm in this role. I don't deserve it. I'm not ready for it. I'm not capable of it. And I say the same thing. What are some things you are capable of and you are great at, and things that you can do? And what are the things in your past that you've learned and you've gotten better at and you've overcome that you could apply those same learning skills to your new role? But I'd love to hear, like, how does this lack of confidence in your mind kind of overlap with this imposter syndrome? Because it's one of my biggest pet peeves is all these people high up in corporate, like, oh, I have all this imposter syndrome. I'm like, that shouldn't be the norm that we all get accustomed to.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And it is. Really, you kind of tease out where's the lack of self-trust. And when it comes to imposter syndrome, when it comes to kind of that negative self-talk and those false narratives and all that kind of stuff, I really do think of it as like your internal bodyguards are like on high alert. So your internal bodyguards are giving you 10 bodyguards for a situation when you probably only need one. Right. And so it's not a matter of kind of looking at like, what's wrong with me? Yes, I'm suffering from imposter syndrome. I don't know if I should deserve this or worthy, or I'm going to crash and burn. It's, again, acknowledging like, what am I not trusting about myself? Like, again, that's a huge question. But then it's also about some alarm system within me has been ignited because there are things right now that are unknown, that feel out of control with. That's normal. And it's not about necessarily looking at it like judging yourself and thinking, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? What am I going to do about this? Is this just however I'm going to, forever I'm going to think like this? It's about thinking about, how do I soothe these internal bodyguards? How do I reflect and, again, pull from data from past experiences? I've felt these feelings before, and it's about soothing these parts of you. And the ways that I think are most beneficial is when we're kind of in the middle of something that's unknown or scary, and we're building our muscles in other areas, if you will. It's about having those pillars or constants that you can always rely on. So whether that is your workouts, whether that's kind of something that you do in the AM, like your AM bookend, your PM bookend, just constants within your world, your day, that you can rely on for that sense of control. And that sense of like clarity and confirmation that like, this all might be a little bit of a mess over here and a little hairy, but like over here, I got this down. And this is what helps me reset and gain, kind of connection or continue to feel connection with myself.
Such a great tip, because I feel like so often when we are feeling like we're in a chaos phase, like the first thing that goes is our workouts, or the first thing that goes is our morning journaling time, or whatever it is, because we're like, so overwhelmed. Like the last thing I want to do is this. But I love this idea of like creating consistency around the chaos and being like, well, I have these pieces. This piece is going to come together. So I think that's great tactical advice. You know, in your new book, Serial Fixer, where you talk about breaking free from habit of solving other people's problems, which I'm sure quite a few of us can empathize with, you talk about how empathy for the people around us can kind of turn into overfunctioning, right? What led you to really be inspired to write this? Like we've talked a lot today tactically about how to, you know, I'm going to phrase it, control our urges to like step in and fix, and to, you know, feel imposter syndrome and lack of confidence, how to overcome those things. But what you're touching on, hey, empathy can actually lead us to overfunctioning, to a bad thing if it's done too much. What was kind of the inspiration behind that? And then how do readers who empathize with that start to really go from that fixing issue to supporting themselves and their future careers?
Yeah. Well, as you can see, I mean, there's a lot of people that are out there serial fixing. Me, myself, you know, I think I don't know if I'd coin myself as a recovering serial fixer, but I'd like to at this point. But I think the reason I really wrote this book was I was just seeing it left and right. And I really think there's this correlation with highly empathetic, compassionate people that again have high level of EQ, that want to help, that can read a room, a situation very quickly, which these are all strengths. These are wonderful things that we need in the world. But you can see where people with high levels of empathy and compassion generally are pretty terrible at setting and maintaining healthy boundaries. They can give like the mini speeches of like, take care of you before you can take others. Are you sure you're taking care of yourself? Self-care, that's important. They're so good at telling and talking and supporting other people with these things. But when it comes to them executing this consistent, you know, resets, recoveries, and self-care, their critic gets in the way. Nah, you don't need that. You need to work hard here. Nope, if you don't answer this right away, people on your team are going to think you're... So there's this internal conflict. There's these self-sabotagers. And again, the ego is highly involved. And not to say we're egocentric, but you can see that like sometimes compassion is disguised as control. Sometimes we like, well, if everyone else is okay, then I can be okay. And it's kind of this external way of structuring ourselves and confirming that we are a good leader, we are a good parent, we are a good partner. And it kind of distracts us from doing sometimes the internal work because we're so busy helping everybody else externally, right? So I think that's a big piece of it. And I go into, it's a lot of, you know, external boundary setting and internal boundary setting. But the real gist of it too is kind of that support, don't solve model. And how do we get to that place where we are, you know, still leading with that compassion and empathy and those strengths that we had without feeling kind of the emotional hangovers and the, you know, false ownership that I think many of us are walking around feeling constantly.
Yeah, it's so much of what you're saying resonates with me, Leah. Like it's I don't know that I'd have called myself a serial fixer an hour ago, but after this conversation, I'm like, oh, well, I do have, I am doing a lot of these things that we are talking about. And, you know, I think step one is really having that self-awareness and that realization. But I love that you've put this into tactical, practical terms and really created a like, hey, this is how you step back from that. This is how you start to prioritize yourself. It's funny, a friend of mine last week was like, I'm burning out. And I was like, when's the last time you did self-care? And she was like, I don't know, Kendall, when's the last time you did self-care? And I was like, this is not about me.
Yeah.
It's about you. Thank you so much for asking. Right. So I love this because I think it's going to resonate so much with so many people. And there's such a truth to what it is that you're speaking. So I'd love to hear on a more like personal note, what is a time where you found yourself really struggling with this? Like maybe it was in your athletic career, maybe in your professional career, but where you realized, like you said, I'd love to call myself a recovering serial fixer now. But what was that kind of like aha moment for you where you woke up one day and you were like, oh, this is a problem and I'm feeling it in my space?
Oh gosh, I love the vulnerable question. I think as a clinician, you know, I had I had my boundaries intact, you know, that I'm in a role, that's my profession. I knew I was trained, like I really could do a good job with maintaining those boundaries clinically. But I'll tell you, it oftentimes was with my family. I have two daughters who are now teenagers, my husband, and it's like I would even just hear a sigh from across the room. I would hear the stress, in one of them I'd hear the uncomfortable feelings, and it would almost like immediately alert me. And my narrative would go off of like, well, if you're a good mom, you jump in and, alleviate this. If you're a good wife, then he wouldn't be feeling this. And then right out of the gate with just a sigh or like a statement of like, I was already like embedding myself in it and internalizing like, oh, it's probably because I'm lacking these skills. And so it was really a step back of like, Leah, you are taking the bait left and right. And you are trying to like figure out step 18 before the person, your daughter or whoever, has identified what even step 1 is. And so it really was about applying what I know as a clinician of meeting my family, the people I care most about, where they're at, and knowing that like that discomfort was not necessarily all about me and what I was lacking in the roles that I, have in the family. And so it was stepping back and really meeting the situation, the sigh, the comment where it was, getting a little bit more information or validating and seeing what happens next, rather than, again, this urgency of like, well, let me call the teacher. Let me do this. Well, maybe we need to carve out some time here. I mean, I was all over the place, just fixing, solving. And man, that was a lot.
I love hearing this example of your story, Leah, because I think this is something that so many parents who are listening can empathize with, right? Is this feeling like as a parent, we're not doing enough, we're not present enough, we're not active enough, we're not solving their problems enough, we're not caring enough, nurturing enough, you fill in the blank enough, because we're juggling so many different things, right? That's clearly a compounding factor that our attention is divided. But also to your point that like we have this ideal responsiveness in our minds of like, oh, but I'm here. Oh, but I'm here. And like that wears on you another way, right? And we see this all the time with parents who make their kids like their sole focus. And then their kids grow up and go off to college, and that person is left bereft because they don't have an identity outside of being the mother for their children or outside of being the partner to their spouse. And so I'm so glad that you were willing to share that with us, because while this podcast is so much about career, having a career, I think sometimes compounds these other feelings in other areas of our life, because we can't give enough attention to our fitness or to our health or to our family or to our kids or to our hobbies, because we feel like we're pulled in so many directions. So I love the broad applicability of what you're sharing. And like, I feel that. I empathize. My daughter, I'm like, she says things sometimes and I'm like, this is because of me. And she's like,
yeah.
what are you talking about? And you're like, no. Yes. So no, I love that you shared that. So if people are listening to this and they're like, okay, I want to go into rehab for being a serial fixer. I want to start taking control of this and changing my life. What is one tactical thing that you would recommend to them to do that you're like, hey, this would be stepping stone number 1 on improving this in your own life?
Yes. Ooh, I think stepping stone number 1 is, again, you've heard me say data a lot. Like, just start collecting some data around this and observing this. Again, it's not all or nothing. It's not black and white. It's not about perfection. It's really just starting to notice when you're in conversations with people and there is some maybe emotion interwoven in it, what role you put yourself in. Are you immediately go, off to the races, brainstorming, giving advice like, oh, well, I should do this, or this happened to me 3 years ago, rather than, again, starting with like, tell me more, or no, that does, sounds like it's been a stressful week, or just pausing, like just noticing what role you occupy. And that's going to give you data around, ooh, I do this a lot. And it comes from a good place. Don't get me wrong, but like there's a way to kind of, again, still care, but care differently and show up differently. So just starting with that self-awareness piece is huge.
Definitely. I think it sounds easier than it is, I think, a lot of the time, right? I very much am that person who I want to relate. And I'm like, oh, you said this relates to this thing that's similar in my experience. And sometimes I leave social interactions and I'm like, I hope they didn't feel like I was minimizing their experience or theirs because I was relating to it in my way. And it is a struggle. So I love that you're calling this out. I think that this is something everybody who's listening can start to do. So if people want to learn more about you, Leah, they want to get in touch with you or they want access to your book, where should people go to find you and connect?
Thanks. Well, I'm on LinkedIn. I also, my website, leahmarone.com. You can find info about me. You can find info about Serial Fixer. But I'd love to connect. So please do connect with me.
Well, I so appreciate our conversation today, Leah. I think this was wonderful. And for everyone who's listening who is experiencing this type of shift in themselves or wants to experience this type of shift, I think that this is a great starting point for them to really start to take control of things. So we'll definitely have to have you back. If you listened to this episode and you loved it, go ahead, give us 5 stars. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. But otherwise, Leah, thank you again for your time. This was wonderful.
Oh, it's been so much fun. Thank you.